So hi guys, it's another edition of Too Many Cooks. This is a very special one with Mr. Robert Horwich, who I've known for many, many years from, I don't know, I think from ever really, forever I've been born. I've always known, I've got early memories of, we were family friends and you'd have a boat in the Lake District. I remember going on that boat when I was very young. And we've grown up and I've known you for forever. My dad's known you forever and you've gone skiing together, whatnot. Now, normally we interview people on nutrition, health, fitness, and all these different things. Now, you've got some very, I think, interesting views on the current situation with coronavirus, but also I want to explore as well, we talked about in the pre-recording, you have a very interesting angle given you are a British manufacturer and people don't understand that British manufacturing exists and is thriving, not this second, obviously, but has been for many, many years. People just think everything's in China or India and it's Bangladesh and there's nothing happening in the UK. So if I may, can we start with how does it get involved with the business? What did it used to be? What is it now? Rough overview of what do you do?
Sure. So we're one of, as you said, many industrial manufacturers in this country. People don't always realize just how many thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands probably. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of engineering and manufacturing companies in the UK. We're a modest-sized company, about 80 employees at the moment. We were a little higher than that a while ago, like many companies. I joined the business at a very young age. My father had a company that was involved in various different things, mainly rental of machinery and sales of certain types of machinery. And I came into that business. It was already a nice business. It was a business in a very difficult marketplace. And it was a business that probably at the time I came into it, was, finding it very tough. Markets change. People don't realize when I started in business was roughly the time of the Falklands War, when there was a massive recession on at the time. Everyone was blaming Margaret Thatcher at the time for the recession, early 80s. And everyone thought the world was going to end. They've been telling me that the world was going to end pretty much every year ever since. I can't remember a single year that I've been in business that they weren't telling me that the world was going to end and that the economy was going to fall apart. But, we looked at it at the time. I decided very early on that I wanted to be making stuff. I wanted to be a manufacturer. It seemed to me the only way to generate wealth, by the true nature of the word wealth, was to make stuff, was to be in manufacturing. And I got to see my father at the time. He was already semi-retired. And I said, Dad, I really want to start making stuff. He said, you must be absolutely mad. He said, it's the hardest thing in the world, but if you want to do it, have a go at it. So I said, hey, it won't be very difficult. It'll be the easiest thing in the world. So we started.
Did you have experience? Did you have a degree or some learning?
My background was an engineer. Not really. No, my background was always in engineering. And even from being a child, even being a very small child, I was always making stuff. I was always designing things, making things, always, and never stopped designing and manufacturing things, even as a small boy. And there was a business that really could allow me to do the things that I wanted to do. We had a reasonable infrastructure at the time that allowed me to do that. And we started making stuff. We started making it in a very small way.
How did you decide what to make? You just saw opportunities. How did you decide what to make originally?
That's a very good question. I mean, you can't just decide. I don't think you could just decide one day, I want to make, I don't know, television sets, or I want to make cars, or I want to make tires, or I want to make glass, or I want to make ovens, or whatever it is that you might want to make. Most people don't go down that route. Even a Steve Jobs or someone like that, they don't go down that route. There are exceptions, actually. An exception would be someone like Elon Musk. One day he decides, I want to make the most difficult thing to make in the world, which is cars. But that's not me. No. What happened was I was already seeing customers, and they were asking to buy products that we would go and see and talking to them about. But they were products that either weren't available, or they were products that maybe I was buying from other suppliers. We looked at the people who were making it for us, and we thought, we can do this better. We can do it better. We can make more money. Or I'd look at how they were living, or how I thought they were living. They seemed to me to be very wealthy. And I thought, well, I'm sure if we do that, we can be at least as wealthy as they are. In reality, we went many steps further, but that's luck. Luck in lots and lots of ways. We're very lucky. It's all about luck.
So you start making some products and it starts taking off. People, I presume you had a good reputation as a business from what you were doing, and that helped.
We were known. I wouldn't say we had a great reputation.
Right.
We were certainly known. and we marketed our products, and we marketed what we did initially. It seemed to me very early on that we were in a reasonable financial position, and it seemed to me early on that actually we didn't need to make lots of money. I wasn't really interested in making lots of money. I was interested in making stuff.
That's
So
interesting.
we set out to make stuff, and if we made money out of it, that was sort of incidental. And that in many ways has been true, not necessarily deliberately ever since. We do lots and lots of projects. We do projects that we make money on. We do projects we lose lots of money on. We don't make any money on. It's not deliberate, but it happens. And I think, if you're afraid of going into a venture where you might lose money, don't bother going into any ventures at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make, sometimes you're going to lose. You've got to be willing to lose sometimes.
It's really interesting because I literally posted on Saturday about, for me, what my life mission is to enable people to be successful in whatever capacity that might be. And part of like my business with allergy is that I know that there's a huge financial incentive for the risks that I'm taking and things that's going, but that used to be the main driver, the monetary financial gain. But I think if that's your only driver, people see through it. And actually, can you consistently get up, get to the office, wherever it is, and put the graft in? I don't necessarily think so. I think maybe if you come from an underprivileged background and you're scraping around, possibly, but there's got to be something more than just money, I think.
It's a very shallow target, just to be aiming to make money. It's extremely shallow and very unfulfilling.
Yes.
There's very little pleasure in that. I'm not saying, listen, if you go into business and don't try to make money, this is what people don't understand, who moan about, the rich boss, the boss is dead rich. They don't know. If you're not making money, you are going to fall apart. The business will fail. No one has a job. You've got to be making money. Of course you have. But it shouldn't be your only goal. And I think in most businesses, a really good example to me would be a restaurant. I don't know the first thing about the restaurant business, and I certainly don't know anything about cooking. But it seems to me that the best restaurants are ones where the owner of the business has a passion for food. He's got a passion for making really good food. So he opens a restaurant, he makes what he thinks is absolutely fantastic food. And if everyone else agrees with him and he loves making it, he'll probably end up with a fantastic restaurant.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously only now to be destroyed by the government, but up until then, he probably had a great restaurant.
Well, this book I just literally read about from Danny Meyer. It's called Setting the Table. And he's one of the most successful restaurateurs in the world, based in New York. He's got a multitude of different restaurants, all different types of cuisines. And he talks about basically that, yes, money is an element, but he calls it enlightened hospitality, where the money's the last thing. So all the different layers of like bringing something new to he calls it new to the conversation. So a new concept, or like, you can tell reading this that yes, money's important because, you need to be sustainable, you need to be profitable to make anything happen. Even if you want to be philanthropic, you've got to have that. But if you've not infused that with a passion and a purpose, you might as well just forget it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. In any business you start off in, whatever it is that you do it because that's something you want to do. Okay? Do it because something, I mean, obviously, if what you want to do is clearly going to lose money, or there's clearly no market for it, or it's, don't do it. I mean, because you're putting in lots of effort. I'll give you an example. Let me tell you a very, very quick little example. A beautiful little story, this. Last year, we went to Italy on holiday with my wife and I, Sarah and I. Beautiful holiday in Sicily, actually. Lovely little place, lovely little town. And one day we're walking through these little cobbly streets, which pretty much every old Mediterranean town has. And we're walking up the cobbly street, and we see a nice pizzeria on the left. So, let's go here for some supper. So we go into this little pizzeria, and actually it's quite a reasonable sized gaff. And we're having a very nice meal. And I notice all the way through the meal, there was a young man, quite obviously the boss or the owner or the son of the owner. He was quite clearly knew what he was doing. And I'm watching this guy, and I'm watching him busy. He's looking at all his waiters, and he's watching what's going on. He's making sure the money's coming. He's making sure everyone's getting served. He's making sure the tables are cleared. I can see he's on top of things. He's proper. And I watch him all the time. And when we come out, he's the guy that takes your money as you leave the restaurant. And I said to him, tell me something. I said, I'm very interested. At this point, Sarah had gone into a little gifty type shop across the way, one of these little places that sells crap. As she said, all the a shop that just sells total rubbish, that to any man is just awful. But women seem to like these knick-knacks, shiny things. So she goes and have a look at the shop. And I says to this guy, and this guy says to me, he said, I've worked here all my life. He said, I worked here all my life. He said, every time the couple comes out, the man comes here and the woman goes into that shop opposite. Every time, he said. I said to him, tell me something. I said, does anyone ever come out of the shop with anything? Does anyone buy anything from the shop? He said, do you know, he said, I never saw anyone buy anything. So I said to him, okay, and this is the point of the story. I said to him, explain something to me, please. You obviously have a fantastic business here. Oh, he's very flattered, of course. I said, I'm not trying to flatter you. I said, you've got a lovely business. It obviously provides very, very comfortably for your family. I'm sure you do very, very nicely from the business, and rightly so. He's a bit embarrassed now. I said, no, rightly so. You're running a very nice establishment. You're very busy. You do a good service. I said, but your shop is the same square foot, square meters, as the shop opposite. Yeah, that's right. I said, why don't they sell pizzas? He said to me, we've been asking ourselves that question for 30 years. And there's the point of the story. They're putting in all this effort. The shop opposite's working just as hard, actually working harder in some ways than this guy. The shop opposite's making no money for the same effort. The guy's got the pizza restaurant. He's doing great. He's feeding his family very nicely indeed. And so there's no point in just having a dream. Obviously, the person has a dream, I'm going to sell these wonderful trinkets. They're going to be beautiful, beautiful. No one wants to buy a trinket like that. What are you selling a trinket like that for? Sell what people actually want to buy. Otherwise, don't bother.
So that's a great actual segue into, so you started making things that people were asking for. And I presume you got more proficient and you iterated certain things you weren't good at, I presume, certain things you were really good at. And at what period of time did the business really, the buzzword nowadays is pivot in the technology space, but you know what that means, of course. At what point in time did the business really shift, I suppose, from being not a wholesaler, what would you call it, a distributor, through to actually...
Distributor very, very quickly, really within a couple of years of starting to manufacture.
Were you running the main operation at that point? Your dad was semi-retired. Were you really overseeing the bulk of the business? Or
I would say that was in the early 90s.
Okay.
It's funny thinking about date-wise. It must be, early to mid-90s.
Okay.
We were at a point where really we were a manufacturer, and we had ourselves distributors, which we still have. So we have people who buy from us and resell, and we rebadge the product for them. So we've completely reversed it. Meantime, every one of the companies that we were dealing with, that we were buying from and distributing from, every single one, and I'm trying to think if there's an exception. I don't think there is. They've all gone. Every one of those businesses has gone.
Why have they gone, in your opinion? Just failed to innovate?
Usually they fail because they don't have any sort of succession. So in many cases, their succession has involved taking on a professional director. So the person who owns the business, the family person who owns the business, is no longer directly involved in the day-to-day. Business almost always fails. Not always, almost always fails. Or the person or the family who owned the business have taken all they wanted out of it and had enough. They want to move on. You know, businesses have a time frame. They serve a function. What's the function that business served? It may well be that business served to provide an income for a particular family or a group of families for 1 or 2 generations. Once it served that function, it's finished. You know, the big corporations and companies that go on for generations, probably very unusual, actually. The reality is most companies, if you think about, I tell you what the analogy I often use when I think about my business, and I use this analogy a lot when I think about employment law or anything to do with employment, which I think I have very strong opinions about. And I always view it like this. I'm a blacksmith. No, obviously, I'm not. Look at my build. I'm not a blacksmith. But, you know, I'm a blacksmith. I've got a blacksmith shop and I make horseshoes or whatever metal objects I make for people. And then I take on an apprentice or whatever. And that blacksmith shop, that smithy, is there to provide an income for me and my family. Now, if my son or my children want to come into that blacksmith shop, you would undoubtedly keep that smithy going. You teach your son how to be a blacksmith, and that would go on for another generation. And it would keep going on until eventually got to a point where that generation, there was no next generation, or the next generation weren't interested, at which point you'd close the smithy. I mean, that would be the end of it. It served its function. That was its function. And so I tend to see our business very much in that sort of sense. It's a bigger version, but it's the same idea.
So I'm interested because one of the things that you talked about is when you first got into this, you loved creating, and that was the driver. Is that still the case there? Is that how you, because I know you work very hard, is that how you keep yourself motivated because you're constantly
Absolutely.
creating new things and iterating things? Is that what happens?
Yeah, we're constantly innovating. We're constantly making new products. We're constantly making new designs, thinking about new ways of doing things, which involves us learning all the time. I'm constantly learning new technologies, new techniques for how we design things, how we make things. And that's what makes it all worthwhile. If you're not doing that, working as a team of people doing that, it's pointless.
It's interesting. I've come up with a very simple litmus test, or thermometer, if you will, for having a good conversation with someone. For me, if the person's passionate, and they could be passionate about knitting, machinery, football, anything, and have a curious mind, there's a good conversation there. And obviously you have that, right? Because it's very simple, but all the people that I'm interviewing for this podcast, they're all completely different walks of life, but they all have that in common. And all of a sudden you have an hour conversation, it's wide ranging, it's interesting. And then I look back at some of my other nostalgic relationships where that isn't the case. And normally it's because one of either those two things is not apparent, which just is what it is, I suppose. So just give people a sense before we move on to the main meat of the conversation.
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do you manufacture now? What kind of things are we talking about? People to understand.
Okay, so the easiest thing for, I guess, the easiest way for most of the people listening or watching this would understand who aren't familiar with our sort of industry, our biggest product now are industrial ovens. That's easily our biggest product. And by industrial ovens, we don't mean cooking food, or generally, we do that from time to time, but most of our stuff is much, much bigger. And it's generally for all sorts of chemical processes. It might be curing of paint, it might be curing of adhesives, it might be curing fiberglass. There's a many processes that are used in industry, many processes that involve cooking, involve ovens. And they tend to be complex. So, for example, we just completed a project for Aston Martin for the new 4x4 that they're doing, that they're working down in South Wales, a place called St Athan. Believe me, why anyone would build a factory in South Wales and St Athan defeats me. There must have been given
large
enormous government grants. That's all I can think.
Without a doubt.
Oh, I'm not saying anything at all about the Welsh people. They're wonderful people. You are really you are as far away as you can imagine. But anyway, they've built this factory down there. It's the most impressive facility that Aston Martin have built there. And at the heart of their production process, right at the start of the way they make those vehicles, the way Aston Martin make all their vehicles, it's a chassis which is made out of a whole load of aluminium components, which are actually glued together, which seems incredible. They're literally glued together. They go in an oven. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's mad.
Yeah, and then they're baked off. And I think the reason they do that is, I suspect the reason they do it is if you think about someone like, I don't know, Ford or Vauxhall or Renault, or a Toyota, a mass-produced car, you basically get panels, don't they, and stamp it out, bang, huge machine stamps the panel, and they end up with your wing or your body or floor or whatever it is. When you start making products like Aston Martin, much smaller volume, much smaller volume, you need a lot more flexibility, and the product itself is more sophisticated, much more powerful. So the way the frame and the subframe and everything is made is very, very different, which of course is why they're more expensive. And they actually are one of the pioneers of this particular technique of manufacture. We've actually done several of these kinds of ovens we've done several for them, and we've done several for other companies. Another example is London Taxi Company, where they make the new electric taxis. The manufacture process is remarkably similar to the Aston Martin. The vehicle's obviously very different, but the fundamentals of the manufacturing, if you looked at the two factories, you would say they're very similar. What's the difference here? Because they're very similar. It's a modest volume manufacture. It's not mass production. It's not 800 vehicles a day like Ford or someone would be doing. Incredible numbers. 800, imagine 800 cars a day coming out of factory. It's unimaginable, isn't it? But they're not doing anything like that kind of number. So we build ovens for them, and then by the nature of them, the ovens have to have very, very stable control, and they want all sorts of weird and wonderful control systems and doors and access and safety equipment. So that's where it starts to get interesting. And that's really where we are. That's our main market. It's not our only market by any means, but that's our principal market.
So then obviously, so it's a really good kind of background as to who you are and what your company stands for. So one of the ways I know you very well is because you are on social media very vocal, shall we say.
Very vocal, yeah. I get in trouble for that.
Which is admirable as far as you take a view. Whether I like the view, don't like the view, you take a view. And I respect that wholeheartedly. And I genuinely just find it fascinating to hear what you've got to say and the perspective that you have on things. So talk us through the beginning of this year, going into coronavirus. Was business in a good place? Where was it, and what's happened?
Okay, so well, first of all, just to recap on the social media thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do tend to be very vocal, and I do tend to put out very strong opinions. Very often, to be honest, I put out the opinion for the response.
For sure, that's obvious.
Yeah, and I think
anyone
who knows that's the case. Some people don't; they get very upset, or they get annoyed, or they get offended. Don't be offended. Argue with me. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I'm wrong.
Or block me. Or don't watch what I'm doing. Don't even. Yeah, it's funny.
Argue with me. It's there to be argued with. I don't mind. If someone comes back and says, Rob, you're completely out of order. You're completely wrong. Your opinions are utterly wrong because X, Y, and Z. I will go sometimes. You've presented a viewpoint to me. It's quite different. It's an excellent view. I hadn't thought about the subject in that way. Fine. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to change my opinion. It's not a religiously held view. These aren't religious viewpoints. These are opinions based on what I'm seeing at that moment in time, or how I feel at that moment in time,
sure,
or madness or idiocy that I see that really frustrates me. But it doesn't mean that I'm right. I recognise that it's not a simple subject. What a lot of people don't understand. I find it really odd. I find it really odd that really educated people still don't understand that almost every subject that we discuss, with the exception maybe of is the earth round or flat, almost is open to discussion.
For sure.
And there isn't a single opinion. There just isn't.
Can I explain to you why I think there's an issue here with people? Because I believe that you watch the media and it's all sanitized. It's all, no one has an opinion. You watch the newsreaders, they're just presenting facts. Well, they're not presenting facts. Obviously, it's all biased, right? People with half a brain realize that. You read the Times, read the Guardian, read the Mail, you're getting some very, very different opinions as to what things mean. But I think the issue has become that I call social media in general brain rot. So I put a lot of content out for people to look at, but I don't look at a lot of it myself, because actually, if you scroll endlessly through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, all these things, you just get real polarizing opinions, right? And you get people that are so far outside, they're like, this coronavirus, people that are saying, oh, it's the Jews' fault. Or, oh, Bill Gates has got this whole plan, he's this horrible human being. And then you look at... Look at there's a great a couple of friends of mine. They're educated, smart people, also from a good background, working families, all the rest of it. And they were arguing with me that as a human being, Donald Trump is more valuable or better human being than Bill Gates. And I'm like, right, I need to have a conversation here to explain to you how one is a wealth creator, one is banqueted businesses, one is a misogynistic so-and-so, and the other is a very intellectual person for 20 years has tried for the very lofty, self-fulfilling goals of trying to improve health, education, etc., right? Whatever. And I then spoke to a fellow in Singapore, and I explained this. I couldn't get across these people, no matter how much I spoke to them, how lunatic it would be to think Donald Trump is a more equipped leader than Bill Gates. And he said two things quite interesting. One is that Donald Trump is a very aggressive character. Bill Gates is a very maybe effeminate character, right? So as a leader, people like this aggressive, this is what I'm saying, this is what I stand for, and done.
Strong leadership.
One. Two, probably more to the point we're talking about here, people on social media and the world now like sound bites. Very simple things. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to research it. They're not interested. They want a sound bite. What does Donald Trump give them? He gives them sound bites. He gives them 5 words on Twitter, whatever. Bill Gates, on the other hand, is a TED talk of 15, 20 minutes. You have to take time to listen to it. You then got to actually let it sink in. You've then got to go and research and have a look at other stuff. So they're appealing to two very different people. And unfortunately for the world right now, the general people are lazy and would prefer to just get fed whatever Donald Trump thinks, v actually really looking into stuff for themselves. That's my personal view.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donald Trump's a good Donald Trump's a good example of what we're talking about. So I have very mixed opinions about Donald Trump. I mean, I don't think. Listen, it's obvious that a lot of what he says makes no sense. In so much as it doesn't make sense for someone in his position to say it. Okay, it doesn't make sense to me for someone in his lofty position. You know, a position that's been held by great men, great thinkers. You know, really unbelievable people over the years of presidents, really intellectuals,
Yes.
great men. And then you've got Donald Trump. So a man in that position of that office, of any great office of state in any country, really, ought to be more reticent, more careful in what he says. However, I do think that some of what he says makes sense. And I do think that on the coronavirus issue, in many ways, he's been correct. Okay, I think he gets a really bad press. I mean, I think the business with the disinfectant. The truth is, I watched it. We all saw that thing where he talked about the disinfectant. He wasn't telling people to inject themselves with disinfectant. He wasn't saying that at all. He's a man under immense duress, as all the leaders of the world are. We'll come to Boris in a minute. As Boris is, immense, unimaginable duress. I mean, none of us have worked under the sort. I work under stress as you do. You know, I work the 12, 15-hour days, 6 days. I've done that. I still do. But it's nothing like the kind of stress that the Prime Minister's under or the President. So that's a 24-hour-a-day job. It never stops. You get woken up at 3 a.m. with another crisis, another crisis, another crisis. It's a tremendous pressure. You get one word wrong once and you get slated.
For sure.
And I think, you know, no one, not one of those leaders really expected to have to deal with what they're having to deal with now.
No.
At the worst, they probably expected a major terrorist incident or a significant war, which they are equipped to deal with, and there's teams of people around them to help them deal with that. Yes. This sort of issue is much more difficult. I think he's done okay. I think he realized, I actually think he understood, same as Boris, very similar in this. They are both understood very early on that the worst thing that we could do was lock down the economies, that it was a disaster. They knew that, and they tried to avoid it. They tried their damnedest to avoid it. They tried their damnedest to wait as long as possible. They tried their damnedest to avoid it. They tried every which way to avoid doing it. And in the end, they were cajoled into doing so by the media and by people pressure. People fed by the media forced both of them into that situation. And what Trump has been trying to do, and he's still trying to do, is trying to lift the situation, trying to get it back out, recover it. Because he knows, first of all, let's assume he's got some level of patriotism. I think it's reasonable to assume that. It's all very easy. Oh, they're all in it for themselves. He's a multi-billionaire, billionaire. He's not in it for himself. He is a patriot. And whether people like him or not, he's still a patriot. Same is true of Johnson. Same actually is true of Corbyn. I mean, I'm no Corbyn fan, but you have to say the guy was patriotic. I mean, he supports it. But Trump and Boris, they wanted to drag the country out of this situation that it's now in. And they've got a really difficult battle. I mean, with Trump's battle, he's got a political battle. Boris has got the same political battle. Trump's got it even worse. And he knows that he needs, I mean, America's in a terrible, terrible situation from being a... Well, actually, answer the question you answered. I didn't answer your question before, did I? It just brought me to that. The question you asked me before was, what was the economy like before this? How was business before this?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the question.
That's right. But on that last point before you start segueing in terms of how bad America is now, I'm correct in saying, as of this recording, which is on the, what day are we with? Monday, the 18th of May.
18th of May, 2020. Remember this date, folks?
Yeah.
The pendulous point in the economy of the world.
There are 36 or 37 million unemployed in America. That's 1 in 10. That's crazy.
Well, here's a question for you.
Finding stuff.
Here's a good question for you. How many unemployed are there in Britain at the moment?
You know, that's something I wouldn't even know. I would educate to get.
All right. I'll make it easier. I'll make the question easier. Fine. Let's assume the number was around 1 million before we came into COVID,
That's what I would
which is
suggest.
actually considered to be a non-number. In other words, it's the point at which pretty much everyone who can be employed is employed,
Yeah,
or if they're not employed, they're turning into a new job.
sure.
The unemployment was virtually zero, okay, in this country. It was extremely low. Taking people on was extremely challenging for every company, and there was a very, very fluid labour market. So let's assume it was 1 million. It was thereabouts.
Okay.
What would you guess the number is today? And there's
No,
a trick question, Charles.
I
I'm-
know,
I'm-
I know the universal credit stuff. Oh, I know where you're going with this. Well, the thing is, I know the universal credit stuff's gone through the roof, right? People claiming all that sort of benefits and things. But I would suggest it's maybe flat, or maybe it's gone down. Just what you're saying because of the furlough situation. Is it gone up a touch? Where's it gone?
Well, I was going to know. The trick question is like this. I don't actually know the number because they've been very careful not to publish it. Okay, so the actual stated unemployment number is whatever it is. It's an unstated number. I'm not seeing it publicly.
I'll listen. I'll Google it while you're talking.
But it's a completely false number, and let me explain why.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all of the people currently on furlough,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that that's millions of people. It's around 7 or 8 million people. Okay, are currently being furloughed.
Mm-hmm.
The furlough scheme is simply companies like mine being used as the vehicle for the state to provide them with their employment benefits. Okay? Follow that, what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I got you.
The furlough scheme is simply, in its simplest form, is a method of the company, of the country, finding a way to pay unemployment benefits to people without it appearing to them to be unemployed, without the government having to administer it. Now, in actual fact, the furlough scheme, the way they've done it, and the way they're doing it now, may be one of the greatest acts of genius any government has ever done. Now, you didn't expect me to say that. You expect me to slate it. And I normally would do. I think there's much wrong with it. I would prefer that they'd done it a different way. But actually, it's a work of intense genius. And when you look at other countries, when you look at countries like America, particularly America, with this huge unemployment, all the rioting, all the problems they've got there, we haven't really had that. You get this little demonstration high pride, all people with nice placards and very gentlemanly and very middle class. Nothing like America, people with rifles and really angry, genuinely angry people
Tigers.
in trouble. Hey,
and tigers and things, yeah.
Tigers. These are people who are in genuine hardship. They're really terrified. We've not had that in England. You realise it's a really genius scheme to pump back this enormous amounts of money into the economy. From that point of view, I think it's genius, and I think it may make us, if we're lucky, if we manage the outgoing now, if they manage the outgoing now properly, if they do, and it's not certain that they will, there's too many factors involved, we could end up being one of the strongest economies in Europe. We won't be as strong as Germany because they've got it even better. But compared to a lot of our European competitors, France, Italy, Spain, we're in a different league altogether. And if you compare how Britain has responded to this compared to America, they're the greatest country. They go on, the greatest country in the world, America, fantastic, God's own country. Compared to Britain, they look like a third world country. Terrible.
So let's go back into then, which was the original, which is, I like segue, so don't worry about that at all. But January or end of last year into this year, how was business compared to quote unquote whatever the normal is? Was it good? Was it brisk? Was there orders coming through?
Business was booming, absolutely. A business was booming. We've had a very full order book. In fact, such a full order book that even after how many weeks have been locked down now? 8 weeks. I
couldn't tell you more. I think it's a bit more than that.
Lost track of time. 7 or 8 March 23rd. It's not 2 months, is it? It's near enough 2 months.
It's the 23rd. Okay, there you go.
So if you think about it that way, it's about 7 weeks. Our factory hasn't stopped, and we're still working on orders that we had then. We're still fulfilling those orders. So that's how busy we were.
Wow.
That we still have not caught up with those orders, which has been a godsend for us. Having said that, we've got quite a lot of people furloughed, so our production is nothing like what it should be. But it's still, our production is probably still on a par with what it was 4 or 5 years ago. So although our production is down, it's not down to 0 or 10%. It's down by maybe 30 or 40%.
Right.
So it was very busy, it was booming. Our customers were in a marketplace that was booming, and everything looked pretty good. I mean, there didn't seem to be any sign of an end to the boom that we were in, really. You know, no one really expects this sort of huge change.
I mean, you work across like pan-Europe and globally, really, don't you?
All over the world. Yeah,
absolutely. So at what point did things happening in China, do you look macro? Do you look at what's happening around the world? I presume you do to a level, but you're that kind of character. Did you have any concept when, I know you have some customers in Italy as well, At what point do you start to go, hold on a minute? Because I actually remember sat down with a friend of mine, and they were talking about an impending wedding in abroad, and now that seems crazy. And they were saying, oh, we're 2 weeks. I remember hearing the fact, we're 2 weeks away from where Italy was, and Italy was obviously locked down. And looking and thinking, no way. I don't see it. I can't see it. I can't see the UK going that way.
I mean, I think it would be lovely to sit here now and say, oh, I saw it coming. That would be a lie. I didn't see it coming. I was told it was coming by several people, very close to me as well. Said, oh, it's coming. This is happening. Prepare for it. Do this, do this, do this. You need to get ready. I said, I just can't. It'll blow over. It's a nonsense. It will definitely blow over. We won't act the way those idiots did it. I mean, the standard joke at the time was the Italians. It's a standard joke. The Italians make tanks with 5 reverse gears and 1 forward. Yeah, that's an old joke that goes back to the Second World War.
Oh wow!
You know, so we were all like, "Oh, the Italians, they're so easily affected. They're so emotional. That they're upset about things. They get so panicked. They're all very hot-headed. The Italians, the British would never ever act in that way. So no, we didn't see it coming. And then when we started to see the restrictions coming in about a week before the lockdown, I remember the first time we started seeing they were talking about some restrictions. Someone phoned me, a good friend phoned me, and we were in shock. I could feel a pit in my stomach, the shock that they're bringing these kind of restrictions in. I can't remember what the initial restrictions were. They shut the pubs and stuff at the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah. They advised against it. They advised against it first. Then they eventually put it as a law sort of thing.
Yeah, they closed certain things, didn't they? Quite early on, they started putting in restrictions. When we started hearing about the flight restrictions, Trump brought in the restrictions from Europe. And we thought, what a maniac. What an idiot.
I thought the same. I thought crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still think that was I actually still think that was a big, big mistake. But anyway, he did that. And even then, I think even then, we didn't see it. Even then. Do you know, it's a very interesting lesson, this. There's several very interesting lessons in all of this. And one of them is the old lesson, which is, how did Jews living in Germany not know that they were about to get killed? How didn't they see it coming? How is that possible? How is it possible that there was a government got into power that was so belligerent towards them? It was so obvious that their end game was the murder of millions of Jews and other people, and they did nothing about it. They had the chance. Why didn't they? And you think, oh, what idiots, what fools, why did they do it? But then you see, no. The truth is, if you're in that situation, you are in utter disbelief. You simply cannot believe that something like that's going to happen to you. You're convinced that it'll turn out okay, it'll all be fine, it couldn't possibly happen, and you're in denial until it's too late. Now, in this case, there was no escape from it. There was no escape. You couldn't really prepare very much for it. Not really. But it's certainly true that none of us saw it coming, or very few. And those that did were generally considered to be panickers and fools. You know, mad. What are you worried about? Oh, it's why are you so worried about it? It'll be fine. It's never going to happen here.
It's interesting. I've heard you mention before, and you've kind of alluded to it as well, that in your position, within your domain, your business, you are the president. You're effectively the equivalent of a small
emperor,
country, right?
Emperor.
There you go. Dictator, maybe, depending on how you.
Benevolent dictator, yes.
Benevolent dictator. As long as it's in your interest, though. As long as it's in your interest.
As long as it's in my interest, yes, of course.
So, people look up to you. Have you just kept a very confident, optimistic approach, or have you been have you actually explained to people that you just don't know? Like, how have you been dealing with it from a management point of view?
That's a very good question. So, day one, So Boris's announcement, the whole way that was done, maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But Boris, if you remember, made that announcement on the Monday, the 23rd. And by then we already knew something was happening, didn't we? I already started off getting our homeworking ready. I'd been into Argos. So it's easy to forget what it was like then. Just buying laptop computers was really difficult. They'd run out. Everyone had the same idea. So the previous few days, I'd been finding every laptop I could buy. I think I needed to buy about 20 laptops at the time. So I found a load actually at different Argos stores, and I went around buying all these laptops. So we already had a whole office at our place full of all these laptops being set up. You know, it's like setting up computers. It takes forever. All these machines set up. So setting up all these computers, we already knew that there was a pretty damn good chance this was coming, but we didn't really believe it. And then on Monday, he said it's happening. We weren't quite ready, so I phoned up all the key people at the company. I said, "Can you meet me at the office tonight?" They were expecting my call. Yeah. So we're at my office from about 9:30, 10 o'clock that evening till 1 o'clock in the morning or something, setting up all these computers, getting everyone ready. Because our understanding was that from tomorrow morning, you can't go to work. You've got 3 weeks, you've got to stay at home. That was the understanding that appeared to be the case from Boris's wonderful speech. And the next morning I woke up, I was already setting up WhatsApp groups with the staff, you know, to keep people connected, a few jokes, chat. It was very, very good. And I woke up on that Tuesday morning thinking, oh, actually, this is going to be the first holiday I've had in like 30 odd years. It'd be great, this. You know, a few weeks off, no customers driving me mad. There's nothing happening. Close the door. It'll be like a nice long Christmas break. No problem at all. And that seemed like a reasonable state of affairs until about 9:30, when I'm already getting customers calling saying, you know, when are you delivering? What's going on with the job? And I'm like, have you not heard what he said? I mean, what are you talking about? honestly, have you not heard about Boris? Have you not heard this? Like
these big companies as well, by the way, they're calling, or small, all different companies.
Both.
Right.
And very quickly I realized, hang on a minute. He never said, don't go to work. He never said that. And he never said shut down. In fact, it's a very important point, this. What the government said was, if you can work from home, work from home.
Yeah.
They also said certain categories of business, specifically restaurants, bars, cinemas, etc., all the ones we now know about, need to close. So retail shops. He never mentioned manufacturing. There was a whole raft of businesses he never mentioned once, not once. They decided to close themselves. It was not mandated by the government. It was a decision that they took for themselves. They were never required to do so, and they were never told to do so. I realized that on the Tuesday morning. I wasn't the only one to realize it, of course, but I hang on a minute. So by about lunchtime, I was speaking to my colleagues and going, have we misunderstood this? Have we jumped the gun? And they were like, yeah, I think maybe we've misunderstood this. So right, let's go back in tomorrow. So the Wednesday we go back in. We're there in the morning. We've got a skeleton crew there trying to work out what to do.
Are they okay coming in? Most of your
no problem, not a problem at all. I've not had any problem with any. Almost any of my staff have had no problem at all. Really, quite the opposite. They want to work. They've been fantastic, really, and in fact, the staff have been fantastic. And we said, actually, we're not quite ready to go back. Psychologically and everything, it just seemed wrong to go back then. So I said, right, let's work from home for the next couple of days, and I'll think about how to make this work. So then we had the Thursday and Friday, and then by Monday we were back in. We had the production back at about 30%. We had the office staff going, and I had my stores dispatch in and out. Obviously, goods in and out is very important. You can't do anything without that. Obviously, the people who pay the wages, the admin, that function's got to continue. I mean, everyone wants to pay, even if it's furlough pay. So all those other functions had to continue. And we just got back up and running. And that was on the Monday, and we've not stopped since. So I only wasn't in the office on the first Tuesday. I didn't go in the office. And then I think Thursday and Friday. I think I actually went in on the Friday. But I think I had 2 days out the whole period I've not been in the office. Every other day I've been going to work in this marvelous road, empty roads. It's been fantastic. But you know, it's been very, very good. It's been very interesting.
So do you think, judging by your view, actually we do that the extent to this lockdown and the fear that's been spread, it's just gone too far. Is that your
Absolutely.
opinion?
I think the government, right at the beginning, like I said, Boris's speech at the beginning. Now, these are clever people, okay? You've got to understand that the people who are leading us, I'm not saying that they're experts in leading us, they're not. The job's new to them. But they are clever people, and they are advised by clever people. Doesn't mean they don't make mistakes, but they're very smart. So the initial thing that they did was the vagueness. I've mentioned the vagueness about that speech of Boris's. Hang on a minute. So you've got these really smart people. You've got the prime minister, advised by the cabinet, comes up with a speech on that Monday night, which is recorded. So it's written, it's recorded, it's listened to, and then recorded again until it's bang on. Are you telling me that the vagueness that was in there wasn't deliberate? Of course it was deliberate. It was very clever. It was very, very, very deliberately vague. And there's lots of reasons for it to be vague, but it was very deliberately vague. The real genius of what our government have done, and it's genius, it really is clever. It'll be looked back on, I'm sure, by historians as one of the cleverest acts of government control ever, was how do you lock down a country like Britain? A country that is totally unused to being told what to do by the police. We don't accept it. Now, Spain, they had Franco till not that long ago. They're used to the concept. France have been in forms of police control and rebellion ever since they were chopping people's heads off not that long ago. These are countries that are used to that sort of oppression in one sort or another. Even countries like Israel, that's another topic altogether. Yes. They're used to some sort of police and armed control, right? They recognize the concept of it. But the British don't. We're a rebellious lot. We don't like being told what to do. We're not used to being told what to do. And the policing in our country is by consent. It has to be it is policing by consent. So what do? How do you get every idiot in England to stay at home, which is what you need to do? Very easy. You scare them. You terrify them. And once they're terrified and scared, and you've got that message over and over again about how dangerous it's all going to be, that you don't need to do very much. They all stayed home. And I think one of the things that most upset me, that I actually found genuinely upsetting at the beginning, because I don't find many things upsetting. One thing that really upset me earlier on, I'm sort of getting over it now, but really bothered me maybe 3 weeks ago was I just couldn't believe that the people, humans, us, were so easily subjugated. Like we were talking about that analogy about Nazi Germany. How was it so easy to subjugate millions of people? Surely it's very difficult to do. It's very easy to do. It really surprised me. I didn't think it would be that easy in this country. It was very easy in the end. I mean, the police had to do virtually nothing. I know we see these odd stories of silly police. All these daft policemen have done daft things, but they're very, very few and far between. You're always going to get a few daft scenarios, but generally speaking, the police have been very laid back. They've been it's been very consensual. They've really had to do very, very little because the media and the government have scared the living daylights out of everyone. Now they've got a problem, of course, which was the problem that I called it on my Facebook posts months ago. Yeah. I said, if you scare the living daylights out of people, how the hell are you going to unscare them when you need them to go back to work, which is now? How do you unscare them? Well, think about what they're doing. They're doing the technique they used on the way in, on the way out. Okay? They're making it deliberately vague. So there's all this rumpus about, stay alert. What kind of bullshit's that? Stay alert. That doesn't mean anything. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? I don't know what it means. Go to work, all these funny sketches. And it is funny. Go to work, don't go to work. Yeah, just fantastic humor, British humor, fantastic. And you think, really? Did they spend 2 weeks or 3 weeks preparing that speech, and then it was vague, and then mentioned stay alert, which no one really knows what that means, and this bullshit slogan with yellow and black arrows, and I don't believe that was a mistake, not for a split second. It was very, very, very deliberately vague. It achieves all the results that they want to. So how do you unlock it? Well, you basically tell people, look, it's up to you. You stay alert. You watch the virus. You look after it. Yes, that idea has not come from me. Other people have suggested that to me. That's what's going on. But you can see that the vagueness, it seemed to me, was obvious. That way, some people will do more than others. Some people think, oh, that means I've got to go back to work, even though the message was never go. If you think about it, the businesses that are now opening, and there's a lot of businesses opening, never needed to shut. There's not a sink, with the exception of garden centres. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. Maybe there's something else. Estate agents. So with the exception of garden centres and estate agents, I don't think there's a business that's been opened or allowed to open on last Monday. Yeah, a week ago, wasn't it? Last week. I don't think there's a single business that's been released that couldn't stay open before. I think I'm right with that. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's not changed anything, actually. What's happened is that people started to go back. It's like, but you could have come back anyway. Why didn't you go back? I think that was very deliberate. They didn't force companies to close, but a lot of companies chose to anyway. A perfect example would be McDonald's.
And I wanted to bring you into this, yeah.
I love the McDonald's example. That's a great example of corporate failure to me. A wonderful example of corporate failure and continued corporate failure, where there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for them to shut. No need, no reason. It wasn't expected by the government. It wasn't what they were driving for. It wasn't what they were hoping to achieve. Nothing. They closed the doors. So that's my point. That the vagueness of the whole thing was very, very deliberate. It's not a mistake.
Do you think that, it's very difficult to say, but do you think, if all things considered, if the lockdown wasn't so fear-mongering, the media didn't work as they did, do you think the death toll would be much higher? Do you think the death toll was just going to be what it was anyway? Do you think we've helped?
I think the death toll would have been identical, Charles. I think the death toll would have been absolutely identical. I think it would have made no difference at all. I think they could have. Now, obviously, you could say, well, they're just words. You don't know what you're talking about. And that's very true. Except for one thing. If you look at the curve, and we've all become virologists now. Everyone in England, everyone in the world is now an expert on a subject they knew zero about a few weeks ago.
Have you seen how many experts are on TV there? Coronavirus experts now coming in. Every day there's another expert.
Yeah, they studied for 45 years on this subject that no one's ever knew anything about.
now they're in demand. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, it's brilliant. But the truth is, we're all experts now. But the data's available, and when you look at the curve, this curve, we've all seen these damn curves. Every single country, has the same curve. And every region of the country has the same curve. So it makes me laugh. I can't stop laughing when I hear people say now, oh, it's bad in the Northeast now, Oh my God, do you know it's really, really bad in the Northeast? It's coming up here. It's coming up here. It's the Northwest. It's in Barrow-in-Furness now. It's like, yeah, because it's burnt itself out in London, right? That curve's gone down, and it's moving to the areas where there are lower numbers of people and lower interface with Europe, where the disease rate was lower, because that's inevitable. We were told this was going to happen. We were literally told it. And so, it's not a surprise that that's happening. But the point I'm making is, because you're seeing that curve operating in the same way in every country, however severe the lockdown was and how efficient it was, you've got to assume that some countries, the people cheat. Of course they do. We know they're doing that, right? Of course they are. You don't believe for a split second that everyone in Italy is staying in their little flat or house or whatever it is, not seeing the grandma, not seeing the grandpa, not seeing the cousin, not seeing the girl. Are you telling me that red-blooded Italian men, young red-blooded Italian men, are traveling by whatever means they can to go and see their girlfriends, right? Come on. The strongest desire in every man. They're going to see their girlfriends. Of course they are. People are going out, like everywhere. So people are cheating. Of course they are. And that's known. There has to be a little bit of that. But the curve's always the same, which implies that if you hadn't locked down, the curve would have been very similar. Now, at the beginning of the whole thing, right at the beginning, this is one of the things that does annoy me, and it does make me annoyed at the government. Right at the beginning, they said something very simple. They said flattening the curve, flattening the curve. What does flattening the bloody curve mean? Right. What they said was, it made perfect sense. They said, look, they showed us all these graphs, and they said, look, if we don't do something, if we don't stop the rate of infection now, the NHS, all of whom are heroes, by the way, there's not a single person who works in the NHS, there's not a single porter, there's not a single person who works in there, not a single person who cleans the crap houses out who isn't a hero. That's a fact. Anyway, all these great people in the NHS, and of course I'm being facetious, a lot of them are doing fantastic, they're all doing a fantastic job. But seriously, they would have been swamped. They're going to be swamped. We can't have that situation. We cannot have a situation where our health service is swamped. Okay, that's a reasonable argument. We've got to have, Dyson's got to start building bloody ventilators. We've got to have Ford making ventilators. GE, everyone's got to start making ventilators. We've got to build hospitals the size of football fields. We've got to convert the whole of the Excel into a hospital and get ready. Phenomenal effort. I mean, just incredible what they achieved. Absolutely incredible. And they achieved it very good. Having achieved it, having managed to get the NHS ready, and they had, I think, 40% empty capacity in hospitals with numbers we were seeing. None of the Nightingale hospitals we used. They never turned a sheet in one hospital. Fantastic. I think that's better. That's a better outcome than them being full of dying people, obviously. Yeah, obviously. But once they had achieved that, they should have started the unlock then. That was the point at which you've achieved the goal you specifically set out to achieve. You now need to set out a program for unlocking. Now, the program for unlocking could have been, look, we're not going to open X, Y, and Z until maybe even the dates that they did. Maybe even the dates that they did. But had they set out a program of action for doing so, with the same riders they've now set out, which make perfect sense, if it suddenly starts to explode again, we start to get huge influxes of people in the NHS, we've got to slow things down. That makes perfect sense. Had they done it that way, they would have saved billions, hundreds of billions, and many, many companies. Because companies are owned by people, and people need hope. With hope, they can do a lot. So if you've got a business that's, you've got a business, it's like, oh my God, this business, I'm losing money, I'm not making any money, it's bad news, I've got all these people furloughed, oh, it's horrible. But someone says to you, look, I know it's bad now, I know it's really bad, I know that your restaurant is really in trouble. But look, on the 15th of June, or the 1st of June, or the 1st of July, whatever date, we will allow that restaurant to reopen. We will have a grand opening and we'll let you open and off you go. Just bear with us until the 1st of July, whatever date they say. The restaurateur can look at his books, he can look at his numbers, he can look at his thing, he can speak to his bank manager or whatever and say, look, I need 20 grand to see me over until that date the government's given me. And the bank manager goes, or whoever it is, or his friends, or whoever he's going to for financial support, says, yeah, that's a reasonable plan. We can see that. Then there's going to be an opening. Listen, there's going to be huge pent-up demand for restaurants. We know that. On that date, people are going to start coming back. Great. You can plan. Not doing so, not providing a timescale, not providing a release plan when they already knew they had achieved their goals was an act of criminality almost. It was criminally contemptuous of business, I thought. I mean, they've been criminally contemptuous of business all the way through, really. But it could have been managed, I think, in a very different way. But obviously, that's my opinion.
So for you now on that point, what's the way out look like for your company, but also for the country for you? What do you think it's just setting certain dates by which things start to unlock? What is it that you're looking from the leadership to change now? You kind of
I would have liked to see, well, I think what they've done now, I think the last speech that they've done, the way they set out that program, I think makes sense. I think they have to be much, much more forceful with their message of explanation, which they're trying now, trying to explain to the great British public. Many of whom are very genuinely scared. I mean, they've got genuine fears that actually exactly the opposite of what they were saying before. So before, we all knew that the risk was really low. So the statistical risk of you or I getting coronavirus and dying or being seriously hurt by it was very, very low. It was always low. Casino low numbers. But when you take the population as a whole, that number is 100,000 or whatever number. It's an unacceptable number, or perceived to be an unacceptable number. It probably is an acceptable number. Now what you've got to do is say to people, look, it's really not that bad. It's not dangerous. There's no reason why you shouldn't be at work. There's no reason why your kids shouldn't be at school. There's no reason why you shouldn't be going on the London Underground, because they're Underground bust. Forget everything else. They've gone bust. I mean, they're finished. If it wasn't for the government bailing them out, they were bankrupt completely. They've had to be bailed out. Is it 1.7 trillion? Billion?
Billion, yeah, it's over a billion.
1.7 billion. Wow, I wish we could get 1.7 billion in bailouts. Just bail out the Underground. It had to be bailed out. Of course, it couldn't be allowed to fail, but you've got to encourage people to go back, and you've got to unscare people. And there's a very interesting way of looking at that. So let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
What's different now to March the 23rd? Okay, what I mean by that is, if a relatively small percentage of the population has had it, if that's true,
mm-hmm.
then, and the virus is still out there, we still know that it's still out there, it's still infectious, you can still get it off someone.
Mm-hmm.
We know that on March the 23rd, or let's go back to March the 15th, let's say, some random date in March.
Mm-hmm.
We know that at that date, a small number of people came into this country from Italy or China or multitude of those countries with coronavirus and introduced it into the population. So a small number came in. What was the number? 100? I don't know. A small number. 1,000? Probably quite a small number. And they were able to infect everyone eventually, or create this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Surely at this moment in time, the day we're talking today, 18th of May, 2020, there are at least that number of people in this country with coronavirus. In fact, we know that there's a lot more. There's thousands of people currently infected. We know that. So how is the world in Britain today, in terms of risk or danger, different to what it was when we got locked down on March 23rd? It's not different. The risk is exactly the same. Or in fact, statistically, it's much greater. And yet now we're on the release. Why are we now being released when then we were being locked down? Mystery. So there is no difference. The difference is the money's run out. The money has run out. There is no more money or will or ability to sustain a continued lockdown. Not only that, the virus has, in fact, although it's still there, it has done this burnout, which every single virus and every illness and every disease that's ever happened has done this burnout. It's done exactly that. It would have done it anyway. It was going to do that anyway. The difference would have been, we would have been hundreds of billions better off.
So you
not to mention the number of people who are going to die from cancer, other illnesses, heart disease, 1,000,001 other conditions, ignoring mental health issues.
Mm.
Mental health issues. I mean, certainly more than 50% of the UK population is now suffering significant mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprisingly, it's makes people extremely anxious, and it's an extremely difficult time for many, many people.
One of the interesting things I found is I was reading a book about nutrition, and mainly about nutrition. It's called How Not to Die. Very, very alluring title.
Always a useful topic. Yeah.
Great title. And it talks about some of these, and this is a really great point, actually, I think. Look at heart disease. Heart disease kills 18 million people a year, right? 18 million. 80% of that is preventable with proper diet and exercise and lifestyle. Take diabetes. Diabetes is going to cost by 2030, they estimate $2.5 trillion. 95% of that is preventable with proper diet, nutrition, etc. And yet, something that has killed, what's the number now? Is it 300,000? I don't know the live number, to be honest with you, of coronavirus. We're taking
About 300,000. Well, in this country, about 34,000.
globally, it was 250,000. I'm not sure what it is exactly.
About 300,000. Yeah, it's about 300,000 now.
Right. So of course, don't get me wrong, you can't catch heart disease, you can't catch cancer, all these things, of course. But what I'm saying is the way in which we as people are taking this so seriously, if we took our diet, nutrition, lifestyle as seriously, the amount of deaths from heart disease, from all these situations, diabetes, etc., millions would be saved. Millions of people. And if for some reason we don't do anything about it, we just carry on.
No, it's not interesting. I mean, one of the most interesting things that's come from the coronavirus thing for me is it's a new concept actually, and that's the concept that life has you can't put a price on life. What do I mean by that? Well, freedoms. Basically, what they're saying is it doesn't matter if we spend hundreds of billions of pounds, hundreds of billions, because it's saving 10,000 lives or saving 1,000 lives. So, or one life.
Yeah. So
you could take an argument that says one life is so valuable, one human life is so valuable that it's worth 100 billion pounds. Is that a reasonable argument? I mean, we would all think our own life is worth 100. We'd like to spend 100, but of course, that's not how the government or the world operates. It never has been.
On that point, what is interesting, what will be interesting, is now coming out of this. One, obviously, how do they recoup that? That's going to be a whole mess. How do they recoup that balance, right? That's one.
Well, that's quite easy, actually.
Okay, but that's one. But that's not what I'm referring to just a second. What I now think some of the issue is, when you have question time, we have Prime Minister's questions in 2-3 years' time, and they go and say, we don't have enough money to pay nurses 5% rise, or we can't do X, Y, Z, right? People are going to go, hold on a minute. When coronavirus hit, you suddenly found hundreds of billions, if not trillions of money.
Absolutely.
So where the hell was that when we wanted it for the NHS, when we wanted to help our school system?
Well,
that's the interesting thing.
The biggest con, one of the biggest cons ever perpetrated on the British public in recent times was the employer's pension. The new pension came in, I think, 2 years ago. Is it about 2 years ago? I'm sure it was. Yeah, something like that. The most wonderful con ever perpetrated on the British public. What they basically said to the British public was, "Oh, you're going to need a pension when you're 65, and you better start saving for it now. So what we're going to do, you're going to put in 2% of your wages, and your employer is going to put in 2 or 3% of the wages themselves into this new pension pot." And no one went, hang on a minute, Mr. Government, but we've been paying it for years. It's called national insurance. We've literally been paying it all our working lives, and you squandered it. You wasted it. You squandered it. You threw it away. And now you're telling us we've got to save for our pension because there isn't enough money there because you bloody squandered it. So they get the employers. I mean, our company's bill for that 3% is enormous. It's enormous. Now, the really funny thing about it is so it's this enormous bill, and I'm not allowed to say to my staff, I'm legally not allowed to say to my staff, you're not getting a pay increase because of it. In other words, if I had a member of staff earning £100 a week, I can't make him earn £97 a week because I'm paying 3% into his pension. That's right. Against the law. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But equally, if I was going to give him a pay rise next year to £103 a week, I can't say to him, I'm not giving you £103 a week this week, Fred, because I'm paying that £3 a week into your pension. That's costing me money. I'm not allowed to say that, right? But the fact that I'm not allowed to say that doesn't mean that's the reality. The reality is every business in Britain was having to pay this extra 3% charge. And that's affecting how much money you can pay people. And what really gets me is they were saying there's no money. You've got to pay this extra pension. And like you say, suddenly we've got £300 billion. There's all this money. Don't worry. We've got all the money in the world and we'll just keep spending it more and more. Furlough. We'll extend the furlough, more furlough, extend it.
And 100% back loans for any business near enough. We can give you.
Yeah, well, we've got money for that.
Yeah.
No control. Before, every kind of control, you want to borrow money from the bank. Oh my God, you had to go through every loophole. Yeah, every loop in the book. Now, any idiot can borrow money. No, we're not going to ask any questions. Borrow money. They say 50 years ago, bounce back loans, are they?
Yeah. Can I ask you? I'm conscious of time, but there is something else I want to ask you, which is, do you think, and what do you think will be any positive and negative effects of this situation right now, people going forward? Or do you think, as I kind of believe, this is going to be very transient and most people in this world we're living in now will just move on and be like, did that thing happen? Oh yeah, that thing happened. Do you think that's going to be the case? You really think some people are going to go, the world's changed, I now want to spend more time with my dog, my family and all these things?
No, I agree with you 100%, Charles. I think it's very transitory. I think these people think, oh, it's going to make a better world, a more caring world. People will care more about the environment. Those people won't change. I hope they won't change. I hope we'll continue. I hope that, and I believe like you, I think that in a year from now, maybe we should schedule a meeting. We should schedule another chat a year from now. I think a year from now, we'll look back on it and we won't even be able to believe it happened. There'll be something big, something else big on the agenda.
Here's a good framing for this, right? I was in the 5th of January, I believe it was. I was in Dubai. Not really relevant I was in Dubai, but I was. And I remember watching the news, right? Do you remember what was happening in the 5th of January this year?
This year?
Yeah. The fact that you can't remember it straight away, exactly what I'm about to tell you. Because you beat
Brexit, aren't you?
No. There was two big events. One, Australian bushfires. It was everywhere. Biggest thing. Everyone was raising money for it. Terrible koala bears, everything, right? Two was Donald Trump decided to bomb, well, probably not him, but someone decided to bomb Iraq and killed, I believe it was the Iranian defense minister, the number 2 in Iran. Right. I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is going to be a year. It's going to be a real year. Now, the thing is, who's thinking about either of those two events right now? No, you can't even remember. You're a smart guy. You've got good memory. You can't even remember those events. That's what I'm saying. Something will come along that will eclipse this in some respect, in whatever way. Really now, just very quickly, and I have to ask because of the manufacturing angle, how does this change the Brexit conversation, or does it change it? Does it make it not as relevant? Does it, what happens?
Brexit conversation.
Yeah, what happens to that? It's a tough
I think... I my opinions on Brexit. I thought it was the greatest mistake ever made by this country. I think what we're doing now makes that look pathetic, really. I had hoped that it would, I had hoped, and I still have some hope, that our beloved leaders, whether they be in Europe or in Britain, will realise that it's absolutely vital. We don't live we live in one world. We don't live in a world of little fiefdoms anymore. Nicola Sturgeon thinks she's in. She's the emperor. She's got more power than Genghis bloody Khan now. But that her aside, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in one world, and it's no good say, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's a world event. It's the whole thing. We all live in one world. We have to do. And I hope that both parties will realise that it's in nobody's interest to create further damage to economies. I really do. There's no real sign of that at the moment, I'm afraid. But I really hope that at the 11th hour they get some sense knocked into them. I really do. Just quickly, let me finish on Nicola Sturgeon, because I love that. I love it.
Go ahead.
I actually love it. Early on, actually, I thought she was one of the few people who spoke sense.
Mm-hmm.
She spoke a lot of sense early on.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a slightly unique perspective, and I thought she spoke a lot of good sense. She spoke sensibly and whatever. There's an old saying that says, all power corrupts and total power corrupts totally. You've heard that saying?
I haven't, but now I have.
Have you never heard it? It's a very famous saying. And the governments of the world are a perfect example of that. You take Nicola Sturgeon. She is literally a 15th-rate leader of a 50th-rate country. Now, I love Scotland to bits, but financially and everything else, it's a very small country. But now, she's there. She's got a podium. She's got a bloody podium, and she's got people, advisors, and a podium, and a guy who does all the, sign language. And she's got power. People are listening. They're actually genuinely listening to what she's saying, and she's genuinely affecting the lives of people.
She's a very powerful leader. She's got a very powerful voice. for sure.
Yeah, and she's taken Scotland in a direction. I mean, they're going to hate her. You know, I mean, she is stopping businesses working in a way that never happened in England. So remember, I said about England, Boris never said stop working. Business had to stop. People interpreted it different ways, but he never said it. She's saying it even now. She's saying no, unless you're an essential service, an essential business, you can't go back. It's not good enough that we're poor, we've got no money, and we rely on Westminster for all our money. We're going to destroy every economy, every business that we've got, and we don't care. And she genuinely, maybe she genuinely believes it, but if you genuinely believe that people living in the Highlands of Scotland are at the same risk of coronavirus as people living in a city like London, then you must be completely mental. I mean, it's the most mad thing you can imagine.
You know, it's a very nice way to round this conversation off. Have you seen the rich list this year? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Rich list. Am I in that?
Maybe. Do you know who's number one this year in the Sunday Times Richest for the first time ever? Well, what industry do you reckon they're from? Nicola Sturgeon.
It's going to be Putin or someone like that.
No, it's not. It's one of your contemporaries. Can you see that? Is it on? I'm not sure if I got the right.
I can't see it.
It's this bit here. There you go. You see it now.
I can't see that.
Well, it's James Dyson. James Dyson is the wealthiest person in England. Now, there are some controversies with him, but this is a great way to leave it because you started the conversation off talking, and this was not planned, but I like this way to end this. You're talking about when you started business, it was all about creativity, iterating, doing things differently. Well, the lead article in this is about how he blew £500 million trying to create the electric car.
Electric car, yeah.
And it's the bit that people seem to have to remember is that to get any wealth creation, you've got to take risk and you've got to innovate. And I think it's a great way to end the conversation with a bit of positivity, and comes back to what you were saying from when you first started that business, is that you risk some stuff, you try some things out, and now you've created a very successful company.
And it's vital that you do that. And just to end what I'm saying, the thing that worries me the most at the moment is that people who are innovators, people who are entrepreneurs, who are starting businesses, and it might be a business of manufacturing, it could be an internet business. I mean, the whole point is people have got businesses selling and doing services that we couldn't even imagine. All those people, the people who've come very often from very working backgrounds, but are now have been starting and doing very, very well in successful businesses. The government's kind of saying to them, try as hard as you like, invest your time and money, invest your heart in your business. But if we want to, we'll just turn you off. We'll just go, you know what, forget it. We don't really care about you. You're not that important. If you have to close your doors, well, never mind. And that is what the government's saying. And they're saying it absolutely to the airlines, aren't they? Think about what they're saying to the Ryanairs and the EasyJets of this world. Great companies. These are good companies. They're not bad companies. I know people like to say, oh, Ryanair's crap because I don't get a free meal on board. Or
a lot of jobs. It's a lot of wealth.
They don't have window blinds or some other nonsense. It's actually an excellent company that offers an excellent service at a very, 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 very low price. And they're basically saying to these great companies that have invested really hard, and it's hard work, forget the money, it's hard work, we'll just turn you off. You've done nothing wrong. You've obeyed all the rules we set out for you. You've followed everything, but we'll turn you off if we want to. And I hope that people don't come away with that feeling. I hope they realize, look, no, it's important. It's an oddball situation, this. And actually, if you do invest your effort, and your time, you will do well. You will be successful. You will.
I think that's such a really great way to round the conversation off. Thank you for your time. It's been amazing. I've known you for many, many years, but it's interesting actually just listening to you for probably an hour and 10, 15 minutes. It's been really...
I hope someone else finds it interesting.
Well, regardless, I found it interesting. Hopefully you found it interesting. That's why I'm very self-indulgent. I do this because I enjoy it. If someone else watched it and they find something valuable, they don't, whatever. Same as when you put something on social media. I'm kind of not that bothered. It creates conversation. Someone will have a different view.
Absolutely. And let's hope people come along and they say, look, you're talking absolute bollocks. There's a completely different viewpoint. And that's great. That's how it should be.
So next year, 2021, we'll see Robert Horwich.
Yeah.
Number one of this list. Are you going to be number one on the 2021 Rich list?
I may struggle to make it to number one. I don't work hard enough these days, but
I disagree with that. And I think your wife would disagree with that as well, to be honest. Thank you so much for your time, Rob. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks, Charles. Look after yourself. Stay safe, as they say. Stay safe.
And alert, and alert.
Be alert. Yeah, be alert. Be alert.